I'm looking at my email right now, Jen.
Yeah.
Southwest Airlines trying to sell me their credit card. Earn 50,000 bonus points and your first checked bag free.
Oh, how dare they?
End
They
of an era.
said that all
End
of
an
the
era.
big changes were going to happen on May 28th. And by my calculations, it's June 11th and not a damn thing has changed. So I'm kind of confused about what's going on with them.
I don't know. Maybe it's going to change. You'd presume it would happen at some point before the winter travel season, the holiday travel season, right?
I have no idea. All I know is I'm burning through my points because I no longer trust that company. So
I'm thinking about
they'll
plugging
devalue
back
them.
into the United Matrix. I've been on a couple United flights recently, and I'm like, you want to know what?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
I like United.
And also they upgrade me. And so if I really was like business traveling again, I could actually sit in a nicer seat.
Well, and they have more international options. I do love their app. Abby can fly. So it's just, I'm looking at United too. They just have more options. And if Southwest isn't awesome anymore, like, why be loyal?
Yeah. And I don't
know. Would any of these airlines let me bring Wallace like next to me?
You'd have to pretend he's a service dog, and your dog's so fucking crazy that like I don't think it's gonna fly. You'd have to train him.
I'd have to really drug him for that. Okay, this is one of the things I'm
or put him in human clothes and train him to stand on his hind legs.
That might be easier to put Wallace in a trench coat
say he's a furry.
Give Wallace maybe a trench coat. I see Wallace with like a deerstalker hat, like Sherlock Holmes, and a pipe. And like basically like a British version of that dog that was against drugs in the 90s, McGraw or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Cliff McGruff. Who was the dog? Crime. Taking a bite out of crime, right?
There aren't a lot of dog-friendly places in the Washington, D.C. area, by the way. This is something I got spoiled with in Austin. Like in Austin,
McGruff,
the presumption is you can bring your dog in. That's the presumption. And they'll let you know if you can't bring in whereas here, from what I could tell, you bring your dog in and then the person says, is it a service dog? And then you lie. And I don't. And it throws the whole system off because I'll bring Wallace in and they'll go, is it a service dog? And I'll go, no, he's not a service dog. And they'll go, you're sure he's not a service dog? And I'm like, why do we have why does the lying have to be a part of this? If you're okay with the dog being in, why do I have to lie to you?
It's got to be. Wait, how have you
I can
not
answer
looked
this.
up the regulation, the city regulation that bars animals?
It's probably
for their food license.
I think what I'm going to do is enroll Wallace in a emotional therapy program and then get him an emotional therapy harness. That way I am not lying. And also, I've talked to somebody that does this where they bring animals into old folks' homes, and Wallace is actually pretty good at that because you want him to be tall enough nobody trips over him, and you want him to be like fairly calm as opposed to like jumping in people's laps. And when I take Wallace into a room full of people, he just kind of like wants to stand there, and you can touch him, but he's not really into it. He's just kind of like a furry piece of furniture. So maybe I could do that, and then ethically bring him into a fucking coffee shop.
I actually think that Abby would qualify for real for something like that. That's actually a really good idea, the way that I could volunteer to help people in nursing homes, because she really is just like a pillow and people love her. Like in airports, when I see kids freaking out, I bring the dog over and let them pet her, and like she just calms people down. It's so
really
cool.
Nice they do in Portland, Oregon. They've got volunteers that have Labrador retrievers that just wander around and you can pet them. I think it's great. This is my big pitch to all airports. Get rid of the fucking TVs. We don't want to watch TVs. We all have a fucking supercomputer in our pocket that we can watch television on. Get rid of the televisions. Bring in dogs and maybe models. And I like a piano player.
I saw my favorite band this weekend at the Cali Vibes Festival. I saw Stick Figure, and I didn't realize that they play with the dog Coco on the stage. And I was like, people were excited when Stick Figure came out, but when Coco came out, oh boy, did that crowd go wild. And Coco just roams around the stage, doesn't really do anything. He's obviously old. But I fell even more in love with this band that I already loved because of the dog band member.
Wallace had a
Stick Figure.
horrible day yesterday.
You
don't know Stick Figure, really?
You know them, Andrew?
Shut the fuck up.
A Stick Figure.
Oh.
No. Ever since John Mayer joined, it's just not the same.
All right.
Yeah, that's not a thing. But
what the reggae?
I guess. I don't know. I don't know if you'd call them reggae. They're definitely like beach vibes for sure. Like they sing about the ocean and
Great.
yeah,
Terrific.
they're surfer type people.
Yeah.
They're just hanging out, chilling.
Their music calms me down. I love it. I'll just like go do yoga on the beach to their music and it zens me out. I love it.
So you can go on a beach and listen to music about a beach. This sounds magical.
You know, you're such a hater. The beach is so fun.
Not my thing.
Yeah, but you don't have to like actively shit on it.
I want a mariachi.
You could just
band.
let it pass. Here, so you know how when you start talking about something fucking useless like Babylon 5 and everyone just shuts up so you can get out whatever point you have? You could do that with the beach.
Okay, fair. Yeah, all right. From now on, I'll just do this.
I also think I've seen you on a beach and you enjoyed it.
Talking about Babylon 5.
Yeah, you went camping on a beach and you had a lovely time.
I had a good time. I'm leaning into the bit a little bit. I had a good time. My position on beaches remains. If my friends want to go to a beach, I'll go hang out with my friends on a beach. I would just never go to a beach myself.
I will say, knowing Keaton, it went over the line of an approval because he loves camping and he loves camping with his friends.
Yeah.
Maybe the most. And so camping with his friends, cool, I'm in no matter where. A beach. Yep. We can still make it happen because he loves camping with his friends so much.
He just seems to think that the only thing people do at the beach is lay horizontally on the ground, which is so inaccurate based on the fact that like we didn't do that for 1 second when we camped on the beach. That's true. So like even right now I'm looking at the beach and there's volleyball players, frisbee, someone's out there with a dog, like not a single person laying, not one. So
you're
we're playing
a big water guy, right, Heaton?
Yeah, I think so.
Despite the fact that you have the build of somebody who should be jumping off the steel pier of Atlantic City in 1957.
I like sandcastles.
I
like making sandcastles.
I think you're the only one of us that went in the water when we went camping. I know I didn't. Maybe Joe did for a second, but you were the one who liked the water the most.
I like swimming. Yeah.
I think you're a beach guy who just doesn't realize it.
Maybe so. Hey, you know what? The more ways I can enjoy the brief time allocated us on this world, the better, right? So like maybe I'll come around to beaches and like, you know what? I came around to country music. I never liked country music. Then I moved to Texas and was like, you know what? I like old drunks singing about regret. There's something to this. I enjoy this. So I got it. Maybe one day I'll come around on rap. Hadn't happened so far, but wouldn't be bad. Would be pretty cool. And of course, the big one is sports. I would love it if eventually we figure out a way to rehabilitate. Well, I don't know.
You said that this was going to be the time that you would follow the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Right. You're right. Do they have like a newsletter? Are they on Substack, do you think? Like, so I could figure out when they're going to be in town?
They play tonight.
In DC?
No.
Their newsletter is called the Internet.
Yeah. No, I mean, you could probably find it
anywhere.
It's over the air. It's free. If you have any kind of access to free television, it will be on tonight on ABC.
Wait. OKC Thunder game dates. Okay. They're going to be playing Indiana has a team.
Yep.
The Pacers. That's a good name for a team. They pace themselves. And wait a minute. ESPN has a website that checks.
Yep.
And it says we're June 11th. This is real entertaining. Yeah. They're playing Indiana.
Yeah.
Tonight.
In the finals. Okay.
Yes. It's what I told you. They're playing tonight.
Right. But where are they doing it in Indiana then?
In Indiana. Yes.
Okay.
You're in DC. You can't go either way. Television is your
hold on.
choice.
Larry, hold on. Let's explore this for a second. Let's say they were, by some miracle, playing in DC and it was an NBA Finals game. Is that something that you would be interested in ponying up the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to go see?
No. Wait, how much is this? I'd pay maybe 60.
It's the finals, buddy. It's a big deal.
No. I'll pay 60. That's what I'm willing to pay. That's okay. Factoring in inflation.
So television it is.
I am here to tell you, your offer is rejected. There's not a $60 ticket available for the game tonight.
Okay. Well, it sounds like other people want it more and they should have access to it over me.
But this was your gateway. This was you read the book about Oklahoma City.
Right, yeah. The Boomtown's an amazing book, and it made a really good case for how deeply spiritually significant it was to the good people of Oklahoma City to have a professional sports team. And I was like, well, I love Oklahoma City. It's like, Golda Meir, when she was president of Israel, said, do you believe in God? She'd go, I believe in the Israeli people, and the Israeli people believe in God. So I believe in the people of Oklahoma City, and they believe in the Thunder. So, maybe I'll kind of backdoor my way in that way.
The average resale ticket price, according to TickPick, is $1,000 to get into Game 3 of the Indiana Pacers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder.
1,000, you say?
Yeah.
And I'll just make friends with somebody that owns a box or something, and then get invited to eat finger food. That seems like the Heaton thing to do. It might take me a little bit, but that's going to be what I do.
How do you do, fellow hoops heads? It's me, Oklahoma City. Although you could market yourself to people that are just into basketball by saying you can watch this game with a genuine Oklahoma City native.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Although I need to get my patter down. Because I was talking to some lads over the weekend, and they're like, oh yeah, you like the Thunder? And I'm like, yeah, love them. And they're like, yeah, how's the season going? And I'm like, oh, up and down, ever since Harden left. And they're like, Harden left 10 years ago. And I'm like, well, I never got over it. And is it Harding? Yeah, I can't. I need to get notes on Evernote or something.
I'll text you talking points.
I like that.
That'll move you along. Because
we could do this like a 90s rom-com where I'm on a date, but I'm really bad at dates, and I've got an earpiece, and you're like, tell her she's beautiful. I'm like, you're beautiful. But we do it with sports.
The good news about sports conversations is that they never really go that deep. So you just need three things, or it's like, oh, you from Oklahoma City? Yeah. You like the Thunder? Yeah. Shea. Pretty much all you need. You just need one word. You just go, and then they'll be like, oh, he's great. And you just go, so good.
Yeah. Okay.
You're done.
I think,
You're done.
You know what? I should learn how to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy. It's easy. From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young. From our nation's capital, Washington, D.C.,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And from a beach in Southern California,
I'm Jennifer Briney.
And we're not wrong. On this edition, we'll be discussing the LA riots and the federal response, and whether or not chatbots have killed the website, according to new traffic trends. All that, plus your emails. Jen, we began recording because Andrew Heaton asked you the question, so you getting in on these riots?
It's wild to turn on the television and be in Los Angeles and be like, I don't know what that is. So as I'm walking down the beach here, I can see everybody's televisions and everybody has it on, but we are not experiencing this at all. So everything that you're seeing is happening within 1 square mile in downtown with no traffic. It's going to take me 45 minutes to get there. And I'm in LA right now. Everything is completely normal.
But there are neighborhoods
peaceful.
that take 45 minutes to get from one side to the other in LA.
Well, yeah. And I think that people that don't know Los Angeles don't understand that 99.9% of Los Angeles is completely peaceful and completely disconnected from everything that's going on. So how are things in LA? Great. They're entirely normal. And yet you turn on the television, even international news is making it seem like, even the way we're phrasing this, the LA riots, I lived in Southern California during the actual LA riots in the 90s.
The Rodney King riots.
Yeah, we are not even approaching that. We're not even approaching the BLM protests. This is a nothing burger for Los Angeles. And yet it is wall-to-wall coverage now for
Jen,
5 days.
I think you're overlooking a very relevant point, which is that cars that are on fire look fucking cool. And they're really neat to put on a television. Yeah. So have you factored that in? Because I've seen some real cool footage of cars on fire.
The handful of Waymos have gotten a lot of press. And I mean, there is something kind of funny about people calling over the Waymos just to set them on fire. But that's the extent of it, really. I've seen a little bit of coverage of looting, but for the vast majority of us here, I'm talking over 99%, life is completely normal. So yeah, there you go. Although I think this weekend it's going to pop off. I'm curious to see what happens.
Let's go ahead and get into it. Tensions have erupted in LA on whatever scale we can discuss. This began on Thursday after aggressive ICE raids across the city, including the arrest of labor leader David Huerta, who got in the way of them, has sparked large protests. That's what initially began everything. Demonstrators blocked highways, set vehicles, including self-driving Waymos, ablaze, and clashed with law enforcement, who responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbangs. By Sunday, unrest is stretched into its fifth day, marked by scattered looting, more than 100 arrests, and property damage downtown. It was over the weekend that President Trump responded by deploying roughly 4,000 National Guard troops and then later 700 Marines under Title X without California state approval, aiming to protect federal property. That was their mission from the federal government at the very least. California officials, including Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass, condemned the move as federal overreach and filed suit against it. The deployment, which costs over $134 million, has sparked nationwide debate on immigration policy, protest rights, and the limit of presidential authority. Jen, is the Trump administration within its rights to conduct ICE raids in LA? Is the city within its rights to oppose them? And who is responsible for controlling whatever level of violent unrest that does erupt?
So I'm going to answer your questions. But first, I want the listeners to understand where that paragraph that Justin just read came from, because Justin does not write these things. And so when I say this, I am not talking to Justin. I know that it is basically a chatbot that gave him that paragraph. And the way that that was just framed, I think is inaccurate, because it makes it sound like this thing that the Trump administration is doing was in a response to large protests, to Waymos being set on fire, to the 101 being shut down. That is not the order of things. So what actually happened was there were ICE raids, and this is different. I think this is an escalation of what ICE has been doing, because in the beginning, they were kind of targeting people. So they would go in for like, oh, we have this one person that did a thing, we're going to go get them. This was different. Like they went to Home Depot and just rounded people up. They went to the garment district, to a company where people are making clothes, and like rounded people up. They arrested 44 people and brought them to a building. Like people figured out which building these people were being taken to. These are our friends. These are our neighbors. These are people that live here. These are not criminals. And so people that knew these people kind of gathered whoever they could. And there were hundreds, we're not even talking thousands, there were hundreds of people that went to this building and started protesting. It was completely nonviolent. And in response to that, Donald Trump set in the National Guard. Now, he's saying like, oh, I brought in 2,000 people. Like, no, there were a couple hundred National Guardsmen, but they did go outside this building and they were standing there looking like stormtroopers. And that's what escalated the entire thing. And so it was only after Donald Trump got involved, because like the LAPD has never been known for having like kid gloves with protesters. Nothing was out of control about the situation. But after he was essentially bringing in the military to police us, that's when things popped off. It was that night that the Waymos were set on fire. It was later that the 101 was shut down by protesters. All of that is in response to Donald Trump. The initial protest was nothing that needed that kind of response. The
response was to guarding the building.
They were there to like guard the building, which the LAPD was doing just fine. So there was no cause for this. The last time the National Guard was called in to Los Angeles was in the 1990s after the riots. And these are like legit riots. Like there were buildings on fire and it was chaos. And it was actually scary to come, not just to downtown, but like to Los Angeles. It was a really scary time. And our governor asked for the National Guard to come in. It was a completely different situation. This was Trump inserting himself, and in doing so made things far worse. Although, like I said, these protests, even at their worst, have been nothing burgers compared to what we've seen in the last 5 years. So, does Trump have the right to do this? Looking at the law that he invoked, I think it's a no. I'm also in agreement with our mayor and our governor and lots of lawyers from both sides of the political spectrum, because what he did is he invoked Title 10 of the U.S. Code, specifically Section 12406, which says that the president can deploy the National Guard when the U.S. is, quote, invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, unquote. He can also do it if there is a, quote, rebellion or danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, unquote. Or if the president is unable with regular forces, aka the LAPD, to execute the laws of the United States. And the orders for these purposes shall, this is not a choice, shall be issued through the governors of the states. Our governor has said in no uncertain terms that this is not necessary. He does not want the National Guard here, certainly doesn't want 700 Marines, which is a violation of the Posse Comitatus. Posse, I hate the name of this act. The Posse Comitatus Act, which has been the law of this land since 1878 and says that the military can't be used for civilian law enforcement. And that's for good reason, because the military is trained to kill. They're not trained in de-escalation and civilian policing. And so I don't think he has the right to do this. I think this is a huge escalation taking us towards, I know it sounds extreme, but this feels very authoritarian to me, that this man is using the military in ways that go against the law. And
is he executing Order 66 like Gavin Newsom's Twitter post?
I don't know what that means.
Some nerds got it. Go ahead.
Okay. But Justin, can you read your questions one more time? My phone turned off. There we go. Oh, is the Trump administration within its rights to conduct ICE raids in Los Angeles? I'm going to say yes to this, but I think the how it's done really matters. Because if you look at the Obama administration, he was known as the deporter in chief, and yet it wasn't done like this. Also, the Biden administration at this point last year had deported a lot more people than Trump has, but the methods were very different. So what the Biden administration tended to do was catch people right at the border who they knew, they knew right away that you weren't going to get asylum, they just sent you home. So that counted towards their numbers. But also what they did is they went to jails, and they had participation with cities all over the country where they would go to the jails. And if someone had committed a crime and was here illegally, they deport their asses. And so they
can't do that in California, though.
It depends. It's a
2018. They
thing.
passed a law. They passed a law that ICE doesn't have. They're not going to cooperate with ICE for the jails.
But that's how it was done. And if you just look at the numbers in total, the Biden administration deported 700,000 people in 2024. Trump so far has done 200,000. He's on track for 500,000. So even with all of this, he's on track to deport fewer people. Now, that could be because of his success at the border. Let's give credit where credit is due. By basically shutting down the asylum system in the United States, there's very few people coming over the border. So there's very few people to deport at the border. So his numbers are lower, but it's always a dick measuring contest with this guy. And so he wants to deport 1 million people. And so everyone's been talking about this number, including people in ICE, that they want to deport 3,000 people per day. And so if you're going to try and hit those numbers, you're going to have to do more and more extreme things to get them, because there just aren't enough criminals in participating cities to deport straight out of the jails. There's not enough people at the border. And so now they're going after people that are trying to do work at Home Depot and are trying to, make clothes and who have been here for 30 years. And I think that's what's upsetting us here in Los Angeles. Like, I was a waitress for 13 years. I worked with people that might not have had their proper papers, but they were good people. They were my neighbors. They were part of this, community. They're cooking all of our food. Like, no one wants to ship them away. We would like them to have a path that makes sense to get the proper papers, but also like their presence here is also not a crime. So we keep talking about the border, and Donald Trump, ran on closing down the border. There's different levels of crime, whether misdemeanor or felony, if you cross the border illegally, but overstaying your visa or just being here, not a crime. It's a civil offense. The only punishment that they can legally give you is that they can deport you. And then if you come back after being deported and are banned for a certain amount of time, returning after a deportation without authorization, that's the crime. But overstaying the visa isn't a crime. And so even taking these people and putting them in jail for 1 minute, like, a judge doesn't have the ability to put you in jail for a non-crime. And so even these detentions alone are crimes. So that's why when people are talking about this as disappearances or kidnapping, like, kidnapping is a crime. Being here, overstaying your visa, not a crime. And so they're collecting people now that are not what Trump ran on, which is taking the murders and the rapists. And he's still talking about that. The other day he was talking in the Oval Office. I have some quotes from him. He was saying that they're removing murderers. These are criminals. They come from jails and mental institutions. Bullshit. Like, they were tackling someone who was selling fruit on the street corner. Like, that. This is a completely different thing. And a lot of these people are not criminals. We also know that we have people that were following our asylum system as they were told. People who checked in at the border, who came here, who were showing up for their court dates. and then having their cases dismissed so that ICE could essentially kidnap them. So these are people that are following the rules, that were not here illegally, that were doing what they were supposed to do. So this is a different thing. I think the criminals here are the Trump administration. I think there are high crimes and misdemeanors being committed every day. And so that's why people in Los Angeles were showing up. It's because we're concerned for our friends and our neighbors who seem to be getting scooped up now because they're Mexican. And so that's why the protests happened. And Donald Trump is the escalation for them. So it's like, do they have the right to do like ICE raids? Yes, but that's not what this is. They don't have the right to do whatever this is. This is a new level. So that's my answer.
Heaton?
I don't like agreeing with Jen Briney in general, but I hate agreeing with Gavin Newsom. I hate that this has driven me to agreeing with Gavin Newsom. So I'll add a little bit to this. I'm going to take the Justin route and go political, and then I'm going to back into the Justin question of is this legal? The politics of this, I think, the optics of this are Trump gets a win in he gets to portray California as ineffective leadership, full of rioting sanctuary cities, and he is going to crack some heads by sending in the National Guard and the Army because he gets things done and he is the law and order guy. I think that's the optics of what's going on here. Functionally, I don't think this is the right call. I agree with Gavin Newsom. I think that this is accelerating matters and it is exacerbating matters by sending in the National Guard, by sending in Marines. This is something that's inflaming the situation. I think Gavin Newsom is right in that regard. But I think that what's going on is primarily political at this point. I think this is largely a political operation for optics rather than something specific beyond that. In terms of whether it's legal or not, I suspect it is legal. You could talk me out of this. I don't like what's going on here. So it's not like I've got a particular attachment to this. My cursory understanding of the Posse Comitatus Act, I'm going to mispronounce it as well, is that it would be permitted under here, at least under prior precedent. Now, granted, when other presidents have done this, they've usually invoked the Insurrection Act. That's what I believe Eisenhower and Truman did. In the instance that we have right now, Trump's actually using a lesser act. The Insurrection Act would be more intense. He's using Posse Comitatus, which allows the federal government through the federalization of National Guard to protect federal assets as opposed to doing police action, which the Insurrection Act would permit for. So they're actually coming in a little bit lower in terms of what they could shoot for. But the Insurrection Act is the last two times that a president has gone over the head of a governor in terms of federalizing the National Guard. Under normal circumstances, I don't like that we call it the National Guard. By the way, we should call them state militias because that's what they are. The National Guard of California is the state militia of California, and so on and so forth. The way it's structured in the United States is that the National Guard has a dual line of authority. One is the governor, one is the president. They have two chains of command. Both of them have access to it. And under normal circumstances, as Jen alluded to, they're working in conjunction with one another, where a tornado strikes Oklahoma or flooding happens or there are riots or something, and the governor calls up the president and the National Guard is sent in if they need additional troops beyond what's going on at the state level. In the cases of Eisenhower with segregation, desegregation occurred at within education, and I think it was Arkansas refused to abide the ruling. The state government was like, no, we're not abiding the ruling of the Supreme Court of the United States. We're going to maintain segregation. So Eisenhower invoked the Insurrection Act and said, well, you are in a state of rebellion against the federal government. You are ignoring and refuting a lawful ruling of the Supreme Court. Therefore, you're in an act of rebellion. So I am sending in federal troops to enforce federal law on the state. And then that happened again with Truman in a different circumstance. And then it happened most recently with, I think, LBJ, where Governor Wallace did not want to provide police protection to the Selma March. And so the National Guard was sent in over his head in order to ensure that their civil protections were protected, right? So that's what normally happens. I think that there's a case to be made that legally Trump can do this. The reason I say that is, one, he's using the lower threshold. He's not going for the Insurrection Act. He's going for something lower than that. I think what the Trump administration will argue in court is California is a sanctuary state with sanctuary cities. I don't know the intricacies of the 2018 law that Justin alludes to, but some of the cities will say we're sanctuary cities. We're not going to participate with federal law enforcement regarding illegal immigration. So I think that Trump could say, well, if you're not going to participate with us and you're not able to stop riots or protests from impeding the government of the United States, then we're going to come in to enforce the laws of the United States. I do think ICE has a legal ability to be there because they're federal law enforcement officials doing federal law. I don't like what's going on again, but in terms of the legality, I think that there's a case to be made that they are in fact dealing with rebellion, or at least that's what they'll do with it. But I don't like any of it, and I think it was unnecessary.
I don't think that there's any case to be made here that there was any kind of rebellion. I think it's bullshit and it'll be called that way in court, but like, we can't really know that. That's what Gavin's going to say, because the other two qualifications, there's absolutely no way to claim that those are being met here. There's no invasion by a foreign nation, and regular forces are perfectly capable of handling, a couple hundred people yelling things in front of a building. So I think he's going to lose that case, but time will tell.
He might well. And I should know, I know very little about that particular law. And so while I could see there being wiggle room there, like the actual ins and outs of it are beyond my analytical abilities. So that might well be the case.
Well, and I also think that it's important to note that you and I right now are talking about the National Guard troops. Calling in the Marines is a completely different thing. And I think that is a red line that is just clearly illegal. I think there's no way to justify that.
Is that not provided for by the same act? I thought
No.
that what stopped like the division between posse comitatus and the Insurrection Act is that the former allows for protecting federal assets, where the latter provides for police action.
Well,
but
the Insurrection Act hasn't been invoked here.
But I don't think the posse comitatus forbids having federal troops. I don't think that's prohibited by it.
It does for civilian law enforcement, which this clearly is. So I think the Marines are next level. Now, they haven't actually, as far as I know, they haven't been patrolling our streets just yet. They've been ordered to come here. So I haven't seen any actual Marines on the street yet. So maybe we haven't crossed that, but just the fact that we're on our way to that with these giant No King's Day protests coming on Saturday, like that's when I think shit can get ugly. And like, I know people are showing up on this Saturday. I know people are mad. And it's one of the things that makes me really proud to be an American, to be honest with you, because if we weren't protesting this shit right now and we were just going to like bend over and take it, I think we'd be in a lot more trouble. Like these protests are actually giving me some hope. What I'm hoping though, is that these anarchist shitheads that are setting the Waymos on fires, I'm hoping that the rest of us protesters can stop that, because that's playing into Trump's hands. But like, people are going to show up this Saturday. And if we have active duty military who are trained to kill, not trained to police, I hope things don't get ugly, but that is the situation that Trump is setting us up for. I think it's what he wants.
Yes,
honestly.
I think so too. I think he would like it if the riots get worse and they're able to call in more forces, because he wants to be the law and order candidate that is rubbing lawlessness and ineptitude in the face of California. So if this gets out of hand and exacerbates, it'll work well for him.
You don't think that would gain that if it stopped now?
I think he'll game it either way, but I think he loves chaos. And he loves attention, and I don't think he needed to send in the troops to begin with. So yeah.
Well, he likes being Mr. Strong Guy. He's throwing a military parade for himself on Saturday. Like, it's an identity that he covets. And I also want to point out
Jen,
that
that's for Flag Day. It's a $45 million military parade for Flag Day. It just happens to be his birthday. Nothing says liberal democracy like a $45 million military parade like they used to have in Red Square.
True. And it has been reported. Now, I will say it's MSNBC, MSDNC. So like, we'll see. But it has been reported in the next couple days before Saturday, we are expecting ICE raids in Seattle, Chicago, Philadelphia, somewhere in Northern Virginia, and New York City. And it's interesting to me that places like Houston, Texas are not on the list. They're all blue cities, but like, he's trying to set fires before Saturday because he has to know that No King's Day is coming. So, yeah, it's not just Los Angeles.
You believe that these are being coordinated with liberal protests?
Excuse me?
That these raids are coordinated with the protests that are being organized?
No. I think what Trump is trying to do is to have as many of these raids as he possibly can, as fast as he can. But I think that, I mean, he kind of pointed out, because he said in the Oval Office the other day, like, if anyone's protesting here in Washington, D.C., you're going to meet a massive military response. Like, he was talking like that. And he said, not that I know of any protests planned on Saturday. And it's like, everyone fucking knows that there's protests. There's a name for it. Everybody knows they're coming on June 14th. So I think he's aware of it. And then to send out this information that has now made it to the media that they're telling 5 other cities, like, we're aiming for you, and they're all blue cities. I think he wants us to react. I think he is provoking a reaction, knowing that, like, we're planning to hit the streets this weekend. So is it coordinated? No, but I think they want the fight.
It is driven by personal animus.
Oh, yeah. I think the target cities, for sure. Just the fact that Houston, Texas isn't on the list. Like, it's south.
On that one day?
On any of the days. The places where I've seen these raids have been Massachusetts, California, and now we're looking at all these other blue states. Like, this is targeted at places that are not full of Trump loyalists. Do you not agree that is a clear pattern here?
I don't know. It's your opinion.
I'll add a couple of things that rankle me about this situation. I don't share the general fear that this is a militarization of the United States and like a fascist increase in terms of troops on this. Like, that's not. I think it's political. I think it's optics. I think it's winning. But there's other stuff that's coming out of this that bothers me. There won't be any force of law, but just to kind of show where the president's head is at. In that same speech that Jen alluded to, he said that anybody that burns a flag should be sent to jail for a year. There are people that have that opinion, and I think they're dead wrong. Like free speech exists to protect offensive speech. That's why it exists. I don't like that the president is not in favor of free speech, despite all of the stuff that the Republicans were saying in the last election. Then the other bit that I'm worried about this coming out of is not that Trump gets a win out of it, and that there's a big flashbang and it turns into like. I'm worried about the kind of the long-term implications of this. I'm going to read some tweets from prominent conservative talking heads. Matt Walsh says, ban all third world immigration, legal or illegal. There should be a moratorium on all immigration from the third world. We've reached our capacity. We cannot be the world's soup kitchen anymore. Charlie Kirk says, it's time to ban third world immigration, legal or illegal. We've reached our limit, and we have a huge cultural, educational, housing, financial, and essential services problem to fix now because of it. We need a net zero immigration moratorium with a ban on all third worlders. Jack Pozo, who I don't know, says, it's time to ban third world immigration. Yeah. Oh, Posobiec. Legal or, and he literally says the same stuff as Charlie Kirk. So my interpretation of that is that there is some kind of talking point that's being distributed within conservative circles. And I worry that this is going to be used not just for having exacerbatory fodder on the national stage, but that this could be used in terms of making like just flat out anti-immigration. And cracking down on the amount of people coming in. I retain my position. I want high gates and wide walls, but I like immigrants. I want more immigrants coming to the country. I want to make sure they're safe, but yay, immigrants. And so I don't like the rhetoric coming out of this of because some asshole stood on top of a flaming car with a Mexican flag that we need to ban all immigration from third world countries. Like I just, nope.
Well, and my biggest concern is the people that are being essentially disappeared because they're being put in jails. We have no idea, like there's no limits that Trump is following to how long they can be held in these jails. And again, a lot of these people are not eligible for imprisonment anyway, if it was determined by a judge, but because they're skipping the whole judicial process. There's reports now that they've put a bunch of beds in Guantanamo and they're going to be sending people there. Like by removing the judicial process from all this, I do worry about the person who was tackled and kidnapped by ICE who was selling fruit on the street corner, because that person is essentially invisible in our society anyway. And so I don't know if that person has a lawyer. I don't know if their family speaks enough English to be able to find them. And I certainly don't know what the path is to get them back when there's no judge to go to. So the lawlessness of what the Trump administration is doing, my biggest concern right now is for the people that get scooped up that we don't know where they are and we don't know who they are. We don't know their stories. And I think that is what people in Los Angeles are reacting to as well, because these are the people that we're buying our fruit from, that are cooking our meals, that are our neighbors, are our gardeners, these are our people. Those are the ones that I'm I fear for them. And that's why, I fear for them.
Justin, what do you make of this?
It's telegenic. And I do think that
mean?
it brings up a lot of issues. I don't think it's a great place to build an argument about the larger immigration stuff, to your point, Eaton. Because, anytime that there is disorder, that becomes the highest thing that an outside audience, an American audience that is detached, that doesn't know that LA is very big, or that LA is so big that this thing that looks like it would take over half of their downtown is just a tiny speck in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's loud.
Do you think it's like, my analysis is I think that this is politics and optics more than it is law enforcement? Like, do you think that that's broadly on there, or what do you reckon the administration's up to?
I think the governor begging to be arrested is probably politics. Yeah, I think that
okay,
probably...
I missed that. Like, I saw a lot of stuff about potentially arresting the governor, and I think it was like Trump said something on Fox and Friends where he's like, maybe Tom should arrest him.
Gavin said, Tom Homan, you should arrest me. Arrest me instead of arresting these kids. Actually, I think he said the kids thing afterward. The initial comment was just arrest me, tough guy. And then somebody asked Trump, hey, Gavin said that Tom Homan should arrest him. What would you do? And Trump said, well, if I were Tom, maybe I'd do it. But Gavin really wants publicity. To which Gavin said, yes. He didn't say that. He instead said, the sitting president just said that the governor should be arrested. And then tweeted a Star Wars meme. Yeah, I think that we are looking at a lot of cynical political maneuvering around stuff that people find very serious. And the thing that people tend to find the most serious that clouds out any other discussions is violence. And California has a problem with vanguard anarchist violence in their protests. It was something that I saw firsthand in the Bay Area, and it's something that's here in LA in these situations. The LA Times covered it last night, which I was excited to see. If I think that people that want this to be about the things that Jen is talking about would do themselves favors by talking about how those people do need to be brought to justice, whether it be by the LAPD or anybody. And that is the thing that puts a damage on their argument. And when it's like, we have it under control, doesn't look under control. Like, and whether or not that's the biggest thing or who started it or who escalated it, whether or not the federal government has a right to ring whoever they want around federal facilities, that's all kind of secondary when the images people see are ransacking 7-Elevens and Apple stores and Waymos on fire. To say nothing of the made in Hollywood versions of like the car on fire with the dirt bikes doing donuts around it in front
dropping
of the
cement
world
chunks
famous
from overpasses.
Yeah. I mean, like that's stuff that will cloud out everything. There was a social media post by the guy who does, I'm assuming it's by this guy. That's what they were said. Who knows? The internet might have fooled me, but it's the guy who does the narration for Ken Burns's documentaries. And he's like an old school 60s student protest guy, right? And he was very critical of the images that were coming out of this scene, in that he was saying every protest is a commercial. It is a commercial not to your government, not to the White House, not to your friends, not to your foes. It is a commercial for the American people. And what you want to advertise is the better world that they could live in if they agree with you. And so the tenor of them and the the presence of violence within them is creating a message that goes against why people leave. Now, leave their house and participate in it. So we'll see. I am not personally as invested into the who started it thing. I think that there are credible claims to say whether or not ICE is scraping against people's patience and decency and morality of the people that they are tackling. I think ultimately it brings to a head lingering questions of do we need to get this legally set and whether or not we need a pathway to citizenship or amnesty, or everybody needs to go touch back in their country and reapply or something like that on an expedited basis. I don't know. But those are solutions that do eventually need to come, because strategic non-enforcement only creates problems where we have situations like this. And I do believe that, the law that was passed in 2018 that doesn't allow ICE access to prisons is a problem. I think that would actually be a solution. If you really wanted to have Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump sit down and say, how could we dial down the tension here? It would be less the rhetoric on both sides, and it would be more, let's figure out a way that ICE can do the thing that I think 80% of Americans would agree on, which is violent criminals currently in California prisons should be deported. That's not happening. I don't think anybody really has an interest in happening. And if and when people are hurt and die during some of this situation, I think that everybody will share culpability for it.
I have a question for you, Justin, because when we talked about this months ago, you kind of said, and I'm sorry if I'm putting words in your mouth that you didn't actually say, but something to the effect of, you didn't write that paragraph, did you? Was I correct that was the chatbot?
I wrote it, but that's fine.
Oh, well, you did a bad job. Anyway, but you said something to the effect of, we have to do this. It's going to be ugly. There's going to be sad stories. It is what it is. But now that we've gotten to and like I said, I don't think you actually said that, so you can go ahead and clarify what you did say. But now that we've gotten to the point that we're not just deporting criminals, that we're locking people up indefinitely, that they're being sent to Guantanamo and countries they're not from. And do you agree that this is beyond anything we were expecting, that this is just not okay or legal? Are you with me at least on that part?
What do you mean with you?
Well, because I'm pretty much against the idea that we need to deport as many people as we possibly can just because they don't have the same papers that we do. But I get that people who don't people who don't speak English, it's really important to them for reasons that are their own. But that's what's there are people that are just here that are now being disappeared. I guess I just want to hear you say that that's wrong.
That
the way this is being done.
You want me to agree with you?
Yes. I want to know if you agree with me, because
I agree with you. Is that better?
Well, it was just before you were kind of, the only phrase I can think
of. I'll try to inject some conflict in. Can I do this for a minute? So Jen, I'm glad you point out that civil offenses are different than criminal offenses. That's something I want to look more into, but a civil offense would be like a parking ticket. You can't be jailed for a parking ticket, right? That's a really, I had not thought about that. Previously, I was like, well, if you're breaking the law, you're by definition a criminal. But I think you're right. Until you've actually been deported or you've been convicted of something, you were in a civil violation. I think it's a really interesting point. I think I depart with you when you say that it's just a matter of paperwork, that somebody in a very waspy accent does not have the correct papers, as you did earlier. I think I would have gone with German too, by the way, if I was going to go with the papers comment. So I guess my question to you would be, should we execute laws even if we don't like them? So I think we probably have very similar ideas of what the immigration policy ought to be in the country. I want more immigrants. That's it. I would double the amount of immigrants coming into the country. But in terms of if you are here illegally, whatever language we want to use, you're trespassing nationally. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Should you be deported? I think I would go as much as I hate this. I don't think that we just get to go, well, I don't like that law. So we're not going to do that one. I mean, what do you think? If somebody's trespassing nationally, they just shouldn't deport them at any point?
I think that's a fair question based on what I've been saying. Thank you for asking it. I absolutely think we have to follow our laws. And if someone here is here and they shouldn't be, I'm not necessarily against the deportations. What I'm against is that there are people that are following our laws, that are being deported in ways that have them indefinitely detained, unable to communicate with their families, being shipped to countries that they're not from. It's the how this is happening. So it's like during the Obama administration, we had tons of deportations. I wasn't really all that upset about it because each of these people, I felt confident were getting their day in court. And I felt confident that people were not being held in prisons when they had no reason to be held in prisons. Like pretty much the process has been, and this is something that pisses people off, but if you can't legally hold someone in jail, it would be like, you're here, you have something that needs to be adjudicated. And so the people are allowed to be free until their court date. They have to show up to their court date. When they don't show up to the court date, that's when the cops can go get them, because that's when they've actually committed a crime. But to the people that are following the process and showing up to court, they're doing what we're asking them to do. Our system is very, very messy. And I've said this so many times. We didn't have enough judges to adjudicate everything. And that's where the mess came from. What's happening now is the judge's part is just not happening. And so that's my bigger concern here. Do we need to enforce our laws? Yes. But we also need to follow the laws in doing so. And that's the part that's been broken. And so that's what's upsetting me here, is that I feel like the lack of due process is not only dangerous for the people that are, selling fruits on the corners or the Home Depot workers, like we're picking on the lower level people now. But if there is no guarantee that you get to go in front of a judge, what is the backstop from a citizen getting scooped up, being put in some deportation prison for, these private for-profit prisons, by the way, most of these immigration prisons, which they call residential centers, they're private for-profit things. There's no limit to how long the Trump administration is keeping these people. There's no rules to this. What stops them from sending a citizen somewhere else? Someone who doesn't have a lawyer, someone who's poor, someone who doesn't have access to the media. Like, if anyone is in danger in this country, if due process doesn't exist for anyone, it doesn't exist for anyone. And so that's my concern. It's how we're executing the laws. And I think there's a lot of crimes being committed by the administration by skipping the whole judicial part of this process.
Well said. Patreon.com/we're-not-wrong is where you need to go if you want to support this show. This week, we will be talking about changing the name of the Harvey Milk. The Navy is doing this during Pride Month. We will get to that. Thank you to everybody who supports us, by the way. You guys continue to do so, and we are very, very happy about that. Generative AI is upending the online news industry, maybe even this prep sheet, by reducing reliance on traditional search traffic. As chatbots like ChatGPT and Google's AI mode provide direct answers, users are clicking fewer links, drastically cutting referrals to publishers. Major outlets such as Huffington Post, Business Insider, and The Atlantic have seen organic search traffic drop by 50% or more in recent years. In response, many have laid off staff or shift focus to direct audience relationships, subscriptions, and events. Leaders warn of a post-search era as AI rewires internet habits and challenges traditional models, including legal disputes over AI's use of copyrighted content. Mr. Andrew Heaton, is this post-search world good or bad?
I think it's more of the same. In terms of things that have happened in media in the last few years that worry me, the implosion of local newspapers really, I think, is a thing. That is more disconcerting to me, because I think that when you get into local politics, it tends to be stuff that you can actually affect, and it tends to be nonpartisan, like whether or not we're going to put I-35 down the middle of our town or we're going to go on the side of it really isn't Republican, Democrat. As we've had more and more local newspapers dry up, we get less local democracy, which is incredibly important. And media turns into giant national wedge issues, like setting Waymo's on fire in California and having that be a touchstone for whether the Democrats or the Republicans, all of that stuff, right? So I think that like local news is an important part of the ecosystem, but that's already atrophied. That's already kind of gone. Like it's really plummeted in the last few years. In terms of what's happening right now, I think that this is a continuation of what's been going on for the last 20, 30 years. You go back to like 2000. I think 2000. I will defer to my journalism colleague Justin, who has a degree in journalism among all other things, of when the newspaper industry actually tanks. But it basically tanks when Craigslist comes out, because previously the way that newspapers funded themselves was primarily through advertising, not through subscription models. And then the internet comes out, they don't adapt in time. The economic model implodes, and you have all these newspapers just get bottomed out, right? So I think that's been going on for a while now in terms of trying to adapt to the internet model, being unable to adapt to the internet model, and then having to cut staff and cut resources as a result of it. I don't really know what to do about it other than maybe just rethinking how we approach media. So the issue for people that are unfamiliar with what's going on now is a lot of online newspapers like Huffington Post are monetize themselves by having advertisements. So you see the headline, "This soup will kill you." And you go, "Shit, I don't want the soup to kill me." That's a pretty good clickbait headline. Or like, "You won't believe whose side boob got shown at," whatever. You click on it, and then there's a bunch of things at the bottom, and that's what's paying for the salary of the person who wrote it. So what's happening now is we've got LLMs and chatbots that will go through and let you know what the thing is without actually having to go in it. So I could conceivably go on ChatGPT and go, "Hey, what's the deal with the side boob thing that happened at the Orioles game?" And it'll go, "Oh, this is what happened." Whereas it used to be that I'd have to go into Google and go "side boobs Oriole game," and then I'd filter through the porn. And then I'd get distracted by it. And then I'd come back to whatever I was doing and I'd click it. And then that would be how they got their money. That's not happening now, right? So they're having to adapt in other ways. I'm not entirely sure what we do about that other than just changing how we look at things. I think that the advertising revenue seems to have bottomed out in a lot of capacities. And for a lot of journalistic outfits, we probably need to start thinking of them a little bit more in terms of nonprofit. Where they're providing a public good, and so we donate money to them, as opposed to clickbait headlines that we look at that try to get the money recouped as a result. The Guardian has a thing at the bottom of their screen that's like, "Hey, if you really like us, we could use the money. Please tip us." They basically have it. They're busking just like we are.
It's a little sweaty.
Yeah. But I think that's probably going to be what happens. But I do think that this is the same churn that's been going on for a really long time. Figuring out how to adapt to the internet world has been a struggle for traditional media, and it's going to keep evolving and keep changing.
Jen?
I agree with most of that, and I'll actually go a little bit further and defend the chatbots, because I think what we're going to see eliminated is clickbait, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. So it's like, if I go to Google and I just have a quick question, like, I don't want to have to go into Business Insider and click through 8 different screens to find this simple answer. So it's like, it's the simple stuff that you're able to find. And one of the things I found really interesting about the article that we read is there was a graph in there, and it was showing these different publications and how they're getting hurt. And Business Insider, I think, is generally trash. I don't really learn much from them. They have a few paragraphs sometimes, and they're really big on like, "Oh, click through these next 8 things so that we can have all these different advertisements." Huffington Post, same type of trash. And they're getting really hit by this chatbot stuff. Wall Street Journal, perfectly fine. They've had no hit in the past few years. And when I look at my own media consumption, I pay for the Wall Street Journal. I pay for New York Times. I pay for Seymour Hersh directly. I pay for Matt Taibbi directly. I pay for the in-depth journalists directly. And it's because they do long form, nuanced reporting. So I actually think that if you look at how this goes, what a chatbot can't do for you in those summaries is tell you all the different angles. A chatbot isn't someone that can go out and interview 50 different people for a story. So if I just want to find out, like, what day is Flag Day, the chatbot can tell me. But if I really want to understand something, I want to go to the human beings that I trust, or the publications that have collected those human beings. So it's like Wall Street Journal. Why do I subscribe to them? Because their editorial section is just conservative dumpster fire. It's like pure, soul of Rupert Murdoch, like, I'm not learning anything there. But they have excellent reporters that are so embedded in the world of business that if I want to understand something from the business perspective, the Wall Street Journal is a really place to go. Financial Times is, similar. So it's like, I'm going to the places where I know that the human beings involved there I trust that they will get to the story. And even if they are biased, I trust that I'm getting something from them that I can't get from a chatbot. So I do think there's going to be a market for better reporting out of this now that clickbait isn't going to be as lucrative. So, good, bad. I'm kind of neutral on that because I do think that there are people that are even in the clickbait. Like sometimes you'll get a Business Insider. It's 2 paragraphs, but you learn something from it. So it's sad for those. But if it leads to fewer reporters, but those people doing a lot better journalism, I think that's something that could be good for all of us.
I think I'm sold.
Cool.
Yeah, Justin, is she wrong? I like this whole less clickbait, more quality thing. Thanks, robots.
It really just depends on where the money's going. The biggest problem that we had in the aughts was not only the fact that you had an extraordinarily arrogant newspaper industry that very much were tied to their printing presses and did not understand that their newsrooms were actually what mattered, that eventually all faltered. And you had these massive behemoths that bought up papers only to see them die, and they declined in relevance. But the biggest sources by which people got news, Google and Facebook, didn't monetize their users directly. Like, you've never paid Google to use search. You've never paid Facebook to use Facebook. They have always sold you ads. And so inherently, you're always going to have conflicting economic interests if the platform that is surfacing the content wants to sell you ads. And then you're like, great, I can get surfaced. And then once they've seen a bunch of ads, now they're going to come to me and see more ads. You are second in that human centipede, which means you have to eat the poop. And the good news is, for the chatbot side, is that right now there is a direct monetization for Perplexity, the AI search app, for ChatGPT. They are pushing you to the idea of, hey, this is going to be a worthwhile product for you, so pay us $20 a month. Once you have that pile of cash, you can negotiate a consistent way to say, hey, look, let's figure out for, the whatever they're calling the new Murdoch empire. Let's make a deal with ChatGPT, with Google, that per word of what your chatbot pulls from our content, we get paid something. So now you are directly monetizing the content that people want the most. And you can make a situation where you are, to your guys' point, not having to do an end around to get people onto a site so then they can see an ad, so then you can raise your ad rates, so then you can get paid, which is a lot more of a bank shot. You could theoretically, there's a world that could exist where there's pile of money, journalism, and it's not a subscription in the same way, but there is a middleman, but at least the middleman is pile of money, words that are surfaced, boom, there you go. That could be revolutionary, and it could lead to better journalism. Will it? Who knows?
Well, that was quick.
There we go. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. That is where you need to go if you want to email this show. Used to vote Dem writes, longtime listener, I won't make this a long one or argue for my view, but I'll just say that not only me, but a lot of my friends in New York, self-selected, I'm sure, but mostly men, are basically happy with 80 to 90% of the Trump administration so far. I'm not shocked by the right track numbers. Obviously, some iffy execution on some items, but yes, I approve of the deportations, all and more, please. Ideally without cruelty, but I'm not in the weeds as to what is possible. End of the attempts, although not yielding so much thus far, to right-size trade, or the attempts to get us out of the Ukraine war, or relatively dovish stances on the Middle East, or the war on universities. Sign me up for almost all of it.
Right-size trade? The fuck does that mean?
I know. And ideally without cruelty.
Now it's the right size.
We had too much trade. We gotta have less trade.
Yeah. And like ideally without cruelty, but if you need cruelty to get rid of all these people that speak other languages, like, okay. I don't get it. I don't understand why this is the thing that we're willing to just throw out our humanity, our due process, everything for. It's just like what I meant about the paperwork. Like if you just like zoom out from all of it, what's the difference between a citizen and a non-citizen? Like I'm a citizen because I was just lucky enough to be born here. I had no role in that whatsoever. And so the difference between me and someone who comes here is essentially a piece of paper. But some of us are so like, well, I have the piece of paper, so you need to get the fuck out. I just don't get it. I don't get it, especially if the people that you're aiming this at are just here cooking or sewing stuff, or like these are not people that need to go away, but we got the papers. We got here first. We're the lucky ones. So fuck you. It's such a weird, the obsession with getting rid of immigrants right now is just so beyond what I can handle. And it just feels very bigoted to me. So I just, ideally without cruelty, like, okay, if you're okay with even a little bit of cruelty to get rid of someone who's not doing any harm to your neighborhood, like, I don't know what to do with you.
Historical Riot fan writes, I think Jen is spot on when she says that there is a similar mood and vibe at play when it comes to drunk sports fans flipping cars and storming the Capitol. As a historical example, a sports riot very nearly ended the Roman Empire. In an event known as the Nika riots, a crowd of angry horse racing fans began chanting Nika, meaning victory in Greek, and began rioting in response to Emperor Justinian's new taxes. The rioting got so bad and out of control that drunk fans began burning cities in Constantinople. Justinian wanted to GTFO and let the city burn, but his wife Theodora said, I'd rather die a queen than live on the run, or some shit like that. So Justinian sent his general Belarisus and his imperial guard to surround the hippodrome and massacre every single rioter.
Jeez.
I love this listener. Thanks, listener. This is great. More Byzantine shit. I love Byzantine history. Byzantine history is fucking awesome because Byzantine history is basically Game of Thrones minus dragons. We all like Game of Thrones. Dragons are cool, but the Byzantines had all sorts of crazy shit. Justinian the Fourth. There was like a whole period in Byzantine history where, like, I don't know, 600 years, where if you're the emperor, you are an icon of God. You were the emblem of God on earth, which meant if somebody cut your nose off, you weren't fit to serve anymore. So this one guy, they don't like him. Like I think his uncle, like takes him into a tower, cuts his nose off, and he's like, "You're done." And then that guy's like, "Fuck you!" It escapes the tower and has him murdered. It takes him into the stadium and beheads him in front of people. Byzantine history is real cool.
Wow. That's a lot. It was an interesting story in history. So thank you for writing that in. I know nothing about the Byzantines. They sound scary.
You know how the Roman Empire ended? It didn't. There's the Western Roman Empire that ends when the Visigoths, I can't remember who it is, knocks it out. The Eastern Roman Empire goes on for another 1,000 years. We just don't really like talk about it that much. But the Eastern Roman Empire is the Byzantine Empire and went till pretty late in the game.
On the One Big Beautiful Bill, a guy yelling writes, 45,000 Americans die every year because they don't have access to healthcare. 3 exclamation points.
It's true.
Did he have further suggestions?
That was it.
That was it?
That and 3 exclamation points.
All right. Okay.
Which is in response to someone saying, if you take away my Medicaid, AKA you take away my healthcare, like I could die, and that being dismissed by a senator. So it's like, I also feel those 3 exclamation points because that was a well-made point.
Medicare for all, ? Right. If you want to help low-income people, you'd be better off requiring states to expand Medicaid services. Original Medicare with no private supplement or Advantage plan coverage isn't great. It pays 80% of covered services, which don't include any non-medical vision, dental, or prescriptions. It also has no out-of-pocket maximum. So while commercial plans are required to cap your out-of-pocket costs at a number that's set each year, $9,220 in 2025, Medicare A and Medicare B do not. That means if you don't have a commercial plan, you could just rack up medical debt with no ceiling. most of the time when people say Medicare for all, I don't think they understand what that actually means. It's not free healthcare, and it's definitely not as much of a safety net as we might hope for. If you switch to Medicare for all, you'd actually be reducing coverage for Medicaid recipients.
That makes sense to me. And I'll say, like, I want a social safety net, but I want it to be oriented around poverty. Like I want the primary consideration to be people who can't afford stuff. Medicare is predicated on age rather than on need. No one's talking about this, mind you, but it would make more sense to me to just double down on Medicaid. Like take Medicare, put it in Medicaid if we were having to choose between two systems. I'm more concerned about people that can't afford things than I am about old people.
But it's old people whose medical costs get so astronomical that you end up without Medicare with a lot more poor people. So I think that's the issue. But first of all, I really like the distinction that this listener sent in. Thank you for saying that. But I think the point is that when someone says Medicare for all, it's a slogan for healthcare provided by tax money. I'm someone who believes very strongly where we have fire department and we have military, like the things that you need to have societally on standby that we can't afford to pay for ourselves. So it's like, I can't have my own team of a brain surgeon, a heart surgeon, all the different things standing by just for me. Like this is something I need on a societal level. Those are the things I think should be paid for by taxes. And so getting healthcare in return for our tax investment, I think that is something we should have. So whether it's Medicaid structured or Medicare structured, I don't really give a shit. But the conversation with the big, beautiful bill being, well, we need to cut healthcare investments or, returns on our tax investment. Like that is not where I think the cuts need to come from. There are things we do unnecessarily in our government. And there is like a lot of waste in this shitty system that we have, this quasi-private nightmare. I do think, sure, you like the Medicaid structure, but you want to do Medicaid for all, fine, that's fine. But the point is that the cuts don't need to come from healthcare because it does result in deaths. So
linguistically, I wish people would just say universal healthcare. I think that would be cleaner because I get into policy stuff. Like I probably, we've talked about this previously when Luigi Mangione shot a healthcare CEO. Like I don't like the Medicare structure. I don't think that it is a system that works well of having private healthcare providers and then having the government pay them. That's an inefficient system that raises prices. So I don't think Medicare has been good as an economic model. There are things that I would do that I would have the government do that are actually more socialistic than that. I would probably have a hybrid model that looks a little bit more like Germany or something like that, where there'd be a private market, but there'd be a social safety net, and there'd be like federal clinics or something to that. But I, guy who still wants there to be a private component, want everybody to have healthcare in the country. I would call that universal healthcare. When I hear Medicare for all, because I'm thinking more in terms of policy, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of problems with that. So I think it would be cleaner to go a different direction. In terms of the funding, I want there to be a social safety net, which means that I want it to be something that is available to people that need it. And I am concerned about the amount of spending that we're doing long term. So we are going to have to make hard decisions. We are going to have to increase taxes. We are going to have to cut stuff. I don't see a way around that would not involve going into benefit programs like Social Security, Medicaid, or Medicare, because they're such a huge part of the pie. There's really no mathematical way that I can see that we could make cuts without doing something in them, which is why I want to do means testing, because I don't want to leave people that need help out. I want to make sure that people that don't need help are the ones that are deprioritized.
I'm the guy who wants to cut Medicaid, writes, we do need to make cuts to balance the budget. We also need to deregulate the medical industry so that costs go down. The laws of supply and demand apply to everything, including the medical industry.
It's just too simplistic for me to handle because like our system, you can't just like deregulate and like all the costs will go down because there's so many things that are driving it up. So it's like the games that the hospitals and the providers have to play in order to get returns from insurance. That's why like, you talk about costs. We don't know what the fucking costs are. Like we don't even have transparency on the costs. You go in for a blood test. How much is the blood test? Well, it depends on, what insurance you have or if you have insurance. Like we don't even have a price list to go off of. So we should just start with what are the costs? Because like you don't know what the costs are. So if you're talking about like this will bring them down, if you don't even know what they are, like what are you saying? So our system is too messy to to have a conclusion that's that simplistic. I think that's just ideological gobbledygook.
A measured plan writes, here's a great and just way to start making a dent in reducing the national debt. Seize all assets of all living and past current members of Congress, the judiciary, and the executive branch, as well as their state and local equivalents. Liquidate said assets and start paying off the national and state debt. These people have made their living and their fortunes off being literal criminals, stealing from others via taxation, which is indeed theft, and by so many other crimes and aggressions against innocent people, even up to unjust incarceration, mass murder, and literal enslavement. Thus, it would be completely justified to seize all they own, liquidate it, and use it to settle our national debt.
I've got a couple of problems with this. I'll walk your way through this. I think that this is a hyperbolic and satirical take rather than a well-hammered policy provision. So I understand that, but based on the entire email, I would say hyperbolic is up to the eye of the beholder, but I do not believe it is satirical. Yeah. Well, okay. So I want a smaller government and I distrust politicians. I'm with you so far. The idea that we would seize the assets of anybody that had worked for the government ever, I think is a little bit much. Plus, you're also from a judicial criminal perspective, if you were to try to enact that plan, you're saying that every single person that was involved in the judiciary, the executive branch, or the legislature, all are 100% equally culpable. So I would be out because I worked for Congress for a year. I took federal taxpayer money. Are all of my assets seized for that? I don't really feel like I am as culpable as Chuck Schumer or Mike Johnson. I feel like they would be more. So I don't think the punishment is actually correct because it's 100% punishment for all parties. But mathematically, it's not going to work either. So there's two big fallacies that are going on with the deficit right now that I see. On the Republican side, the fallacy is that we can get out of the debt, we can get out of the deficit entirely through tax cuts. That can work. The Laffer curve is real. Sometimes you can stimulate the economy enough that the economic growth outpaces the cuts that you did. Kennedy did that and it worked. But what they're proposing now and what they've been proposing is so predicated on year over year gargantuan growth that it to say it is overly optimistic is a bit much. It's a way of saying we're just going to ignore everything else. But you're going to have you either have to raise taxes or let the tax cuts expire. So on the Republican side, it's like the growth is not going to be sufficient. You're going to have to do something besides tax cuts. On the Democratic side, there's an idea that if we just made the rich pay more, we could take care of this. That is also fallacious. There's not enough rich people to do it. If you took all of the billionaires in the country and you did as the listener is talking about, you seized all of their assets, all of them, the pools, the Rolexes, the cars, all of their stocks, you assume there's no effect on the economy, that everybody continues working the exact same amount, that no company loses any of its money. There's not a depression that results from any of this. Everything's the same, except we take every dollar that every billionaire in the country has. It would fund the federal government as we're currently spending for about 3 months. That's if we take all of them, about 3 months. And they've got more money than the people you're describing, I suspect, if we were to add up all of the government employees. So the picking a target group and going, these people aren't paying their fair share, whether we're talking about billionaires or we're talking about government employees, it's still not going to be enough money to get out of that deficit. It's going to have to come with general tax increases and general spending reductions to get away from that.
When I saw this email, I didn't see this as an actual suggestion for bringing down the debt because there's no way, even if you collected everybody's assets, that it's going to do anything about the debt. This seems like vindictive, anti-government, just ideology, because this is someone who says, taxation is literal theft. Like, no, it's not. Like, taxation is what creates the roads you drive on. Like, it's necessary. I think we're taxed too much and get too little. Like, that's an argument you can make, but it's literal theft and everyone who works for the government is a criminal. Like, get out of here. This is just, there's a part of the society that has decided that being anti-government is cool. And that's what this reads like to me. Like, nope.
As a side note, we are gearing towards higher taxes and lower services. That's what the course is on for, because more and more of the national tax expenditures are just paying service on the debt.
It's $1 trillion a year.
Huh? Yeah, it's a lot.
$1 trillion.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's now exceeded the military. It's exceeded Medicare. It hasn't exceeded Social Security yet, but it will. And so if we don't do something, I do think there's going to be an economic catastrophe in somewhere between 15 to 30 years that's going to be horrific. But even if we don't do that, if it just kind of goes on indefinitely, what we're looking at over the next 20 years is paying European taxes without European services, just to pay for the shit we're spending right now. Because we're spending about $200,000 a second in federal expenditures every single day. It's an incredible amount.
And that interest is such a waste. It's just going to banks and bondholders. You don't get anything for it for $1 trillion a year. So I'm with you. Like, the debt needs to come down, but these are not serious proposals.
Okay, then, writes, I spent the first years of my career answering phones for an insurance carrier. Do you know how many times a day we heard, then I guess I'll just die, because somebody couldn't get whatever they wanted covered? I once had a man tell me he was going to blow up the building because we wouldn't pay for his penis pump. And the thing is, this was Minnesota Medicaid, which covers just about everything. So it wasn't usually a serious or even reasonable request.
I'd like to take this one. The fact that I did not get that penis pump still enrages me, and I apologize for calling it a bomb threat, but in many ways, I feel like it kind of saved my life when I finally got it, because I'd been struggling with some stuff and I needed that. So, like no harm, no foul.
BBL Tizzy writes, every time I hear Big Beautiful Bill, I mentally substitute Big Beautiful Legislation because the acronym makes me giggle. Me too, emailer.
Can I admit that I don't get the joke?
You don't know what a BBL is?
No.
It's a Brazilian butt lift.
Oh.
Did you also not get the joke?
I thought it was a porn thing.
Like, I mean, well, no. It's not like
I thought it was like
BBC.
big black something, but I couldn't figure out what the L was. Labia? I wasn't sure.
No.
Yeah, big black labia. That's a thing.
Yeah. Big beautiful labia.
It is now. Add that to the hedonisms, the big black labia.
And that's what did it. Goodbye, everybody. That's my career.
What's a Brazilian butt lift?
So, like Kim Kardashian, the trend of women with like very high, very big butts.
Okay.
That is a Brazilian butt lift.
Okay. Gotcha.
On mosquitoes, the Wuhan special writes, I like bats, but did everybody forget that bats are the reservoirs for viral diversity from which we occasionally get a questionable present?
Yeah, that's true. Bats are the worst, in fact, because there are millions of them all rubbing up against each other. Like they are the hot spots for viral development.
Well, I mean, I think this is alluding to COVID, which came from a lab. So let's stop blaming the bats.
Maybe the bat's got a bad rhyme. Think of the Eagles, writes, referencing your discussion about poisoning the mosquito initiatives eradicating malaria. Part of that involved using massive DDT usage, as documented by Rachel Carson's The Silent Spring. This appears to be a miracle until DDT started making its way up the food chain. Eventually, the residue led to apex predators like the bald eagle being unable to reproduce as their eggshells were too thin to support incubation.
I've heard that a lot of that ended up being disproven, and that there were a lot of people that ended up dying of malaria because we weren't using pesticide. But either way, though, I agree with your underlying premise. I think that genetically eliminating mosquitoes would be better for the environment than spraying poison into the environment.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg. On PX3 this week, Friday's episode will be Evan Scrimshaw discussing the New York City mayoral race. We have a very, very well-known candidate in Andrew Cuomo, who is running a dog shit campaign, and a Democratic socialist who is running a exceptional campaign. Is that enough to eclipse somebody with the kind of name recognition that a Cuomo has in New York City? We will discuss on Politics.
Justin, is there a doomed weirdo like Andrew Yang that I can root for like I did last time?
In the New York City mayoral race? No. I mean, there is ranked choice voting. So that can get your...
it didn't make everything work better for me.
Yeah. There's been a lot of anti-ranked choice voting stuff with this round because it doesn't appear that anything has changed except for a further confusion of messaging of like who's going to rank who, and strategic positioning there, but it hasn't softened any of the rhetoric or made things more mainstream. In fact, if anything, you've kind of gotten more polar opposite candidates.
It's possible I'm wrong about ranked choice voting, but probably not, because I haven't been wrong about anything so far. So
it's the name of the show.
Not. Yeah. Also, couple things I like about New York government. New York City does fusion voting. I think all of New York State does fusion voting, right, Justin?
I believe so, yes.
I think that's cool. I wish that were more common. So anybody unfamiliar with fusion voting, you have like 5 parties. You'll have like the Working Families with Kids Party or something. I can't remember the name. I think it's the Working Families Party. And you'll have the Democratic Party. And like sometimes the person on the Working Families Party will get the Democratic nomination and you'll have both. Sometimes they won't. You have this fairly commonly in American politics late in the game, like William Jennings Bryan, who was the Populist Party candidate and the Democratic Party candidate at the same time. The other thing I like about New York government, they redo their constitution every 30 years, I think. Thomas Jefferson thought it was tyrannical to have a permanent constitution because it would bind all future peoples to the decisions of dead people. Like he thought it was like a generationally tyrannical thing. So what he thought was you should just redo the Constitution every 30 years so that every generation gets to do it. And like New York kind of does that. And they basically just roll over the last one, but they at least vote on it and go, do we want to do this?
Yeah. And if we look at efficient government, we look to Albany. Jen, the dish.
So the episode that's still the latest on the public feed is basically the top 5 worst things in the big, beautiful bill, with the absolute worst thing in there that I saw being a provision that no one's talking about that allows the Trump administration to lock up children with their parents who are being illegally detained for indefinite amounts of time. Because you are seeing situations. There was a tourist from, I think, Nicaragua. She was walking on the streets of New York, gets scooped up by ICE. Her 12-year-old daughter was just left by herself on the street. And so you're seeing more and more scenes of this where it's like they scoop up the parent and then the kid's just left. And so they think the humane thing to do is to lock the child in jail as well. So there's just shit like that in the bill. There's also this weird AI thing that would prevent state regulation of AI for 10 years. And so I was looking through hearings and found a hearing where they were actually discussing that particular provision. And so listen to the public episode now, but the one that I'm going to be releasing this weekend is the conversation that was had in Congress about why they would do that, why they would want to stop regulation of AI for 10 years. It was really interesting. And so I'm going to give you, the highlights of that hearing because it was like, 3.5 hours long or something. But yeah, so I'm putting all those clips together and that's what you'll have. So it's kind of a follow-up to the Big Beautiful Bill episode. And the Senate parliamentarian still hasn't ruled on that. And so I do think that we need to be calling our senators still to make sure that these things don't make it into law, because it's a horrific bill. Not beyond the numbers, it's a horrific bill. So that's what's on the latest episode of Congressional Dish.
Heaton.
I'm still on an assassination kick. I had a fun time writing about Andrew Jackson and Andrew Jackson and James Garfield, and listeners liked it enough that I'm like, all right, let's move on to McKinley. So let me dovetail this week's episode with what I'm talking about on the ORF. Jen and Justin both brought up anarchists earlier, people that are lobbing Molotov cocktails going on right now in LA or the prospects thereof, right? So William McKinley was killed by an anarchist. And it's an interesting period of American history for a couple of reasons. Part of it is that it actually felt a lot like right after 9/11 when people were worried about terrorists. Like as McKinley's pulling into town, there was a 21 gun salute that was too close to the train. It blew out all the windows on the train, and everybody started screaming anarchists. Like none of that even happened yet. But everybody was so on edge about anarchists, and they were right to be that time because there was an anarchist that plugged the president and killed him. And I talked about that.
That's a zoning failure.
Then the other bit too that I talk about, like it's going to be on the bonus episode, but I'm going to have a sample of it on the main feed this week, is McKinley's a really interesting guy because he's the pivot point where America goes from a regional power to a global power. Prior to McKinley, America, in the mind of America, stayed in its own backyard. It went across the continent and it fought Mexico and occasionally Canada, but that was it. It didn't go anywhere else. And McKinley's the first time where Americans start to go, maybe we should start throwing our weight around globally. And everything changes from there on out. So kind of the birth of American empire and McKinley being murdered by an anarchist is what we're talking about on this week's episode.
All right. Well, go ahead and check all that out. For Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young, reminding you that we're not wrong.
Dog and Pony Show audio.